Gothic. What is Gothic? Originated as a style of medieval architecture, the Gothic architecture appealed to the sense of greatness and the sublime with its ribbed vault, flying buttress, and pointed arch. It is something to awe and fear whenever people view these ever-looming buildings. But what about Gothic fiction? What is Gothic fiction? Well, Gothic literature can be defined as a writing that employs dark and picturesque scenery, startling and melodramatic narrative devices, and an overall atmosphere of exoticism, mystery, fear, and dread. Well-known works of Gothic literature were The Castle of Otranto by Horace Walpole, Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte, and Dracula by Bram Stoker.
So, what are the elements that make a literary text Gothic? Here are 3 characteristics that are common for us to see in the genre, which are romance, setting, and violence. Let's start off with romance first. Gothicism did rise out during Romanticism, so of course, while being entertained by horror, sometimes the heart yearns, longs for something sentimental. Although Heathcliff and Catherine are not related by blood, they were raised as siblings, which kind of indicates that they are indeed brother and sister. The concept of incestual relationships was something that was popular due to them being a guilty pleasure, as people felt as if it was something new, something they would find interesting. There's also a theme on Gothic romance of how the hero is portrayed to be a prideful, arrogant gentleman.
Well, on that mercenary ground, will you consent to speak as my equal, without thinking that the request arises from insolence?
Gothicism also revolves around young women who are either a governess or a new bride who live in dark, eerie mansions that involve mysterious, handsome men with a past. Although the male lead is often portrayed to be cold and flawed at times, and even has similar traits to an anti-hero, although they are portrayed as cold, they are also the ones who crave for attention. The heroines will be the ones who will keep them sane and lead them to happiness.
Both positive and negative, the emotions of a Gothic romance are at an all-time high. The romance the characters experience is also an intense, powerful love being paired with the uncertainty of whether or not it will be reciprocated. It may also result in illicit love or lust, threatening the virtue of the heroine.
Let's move on to the setting. There's a pattern that we see in Gothic films, and a lot of them use dark, gloomy elements that would evoke this emotion of suspense and create a mysterious atmosphere that would intrigue an unsettling feeling. Typical Gothic settings include buildings like a dark, old castle or small, narrow passageways. Even in Jane Eyre, you can see the gloomy ambience. Since Gothicism is closely tied to terror and horror, this is why a lot of these are seen in the films. The element of mystery is there. The setting is made in that way to create a mysterious and suspenseful feeling, almost as if we are there to experience it ourselves.
From the outside, it looks empty and barren, with the only thing that stands out is the house. Upon entering, it can be seen how empty and sad the place looks. And as the protagonist is absorbing his surroundings, it can be said that the atmosphere feels too big, dark, as if it is hiding something. It looks dramatic as her dress flows behind her. It can be seen that the floors look unkept, with leaves strewn about and dust hanging from the railing. In this closing scene of the movie, the camera pans over to the inside of the mansion for one last time, with traces of what had happened here. It then zooms and ends over to the fireplace.
Let's talk about violence. In Gothic literature, they use violence as some kind of assertiveness to show their rebellious side. Heathcliff here was a nobody, and he was looked down upon, especially when he was younger, since he was seen as an object of abuse. To gain power and become superior to others, Heathcliff became aggressive and rebelled with his actions of violence. In the 19th century, it was believed that women were inferior to men. In this scene, it portrays how he finds satisfactions from his violence, which shows his pride in having a high position and power.
One of the famous figures is Edgar Allan Poe, whose elements of Gothic fiction are considered and acknowledged as the classics of 19th century Gothic literature. He inherited the tradition of the Gothic fictions and made innovations on it. In his works, he revealed people's horror towards supernature, nothingness, death, evil, and disintegration of personality. In the portrait of evil and horror, he achieves the sublimation and purification of man's inner world. When it comes to trivia, did you know that Jane Austen had actually put together a pretty entertaining parody of Gothic novels, which was called Northanger Abbey? The second fact is that Goth was actually used as a derogatory term that people back then used to indicate the barbarous, uncivilized, unsettled, or the unrefined.
Over the years, Gothic literature has been a great inspiration for blockbuster movies and books, and still continues to be appropriated by popular culture in new ways. From haunts, ghouls, violence, family secrets, and scary creatures, the inspiration behind today's trends and characters stem from Gothic literature of the 19th century. An understanding of the Gothic literature can help contribute to a richer and deeper appreciation of the current horror media, while also presenting a foundational springboard for professional success enjoyed by novelists, screenwriters, poets, and others who have found new and inventive ways to reconstruct these themes that resonate with the new generation.